Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the United Way Women's Leadership Lunch. We're delighted to have all of you here today. My name is Lois Bunce. I'm president of United Way, and it's great to hear all the conversation and the buzz, and sorry to interrupt it, but we've got a short program. Well, maybe not quite a short program, but we have a great program for you today, and are delighted to have you join us. We want to thank the Cedar Rapids Country Club for hosting our group today. Obviously, their staff are around. If you need anything, please check in with them. If you want to know where the restrooms are, they're out in the hall, and go to your left. Also, we found in the restroom a ring just this afternoon. It's a black ring. I know, everybody raised their hand, right? Erica, standing in the back, has it, and so if you have misplaced a ring, she does have it for you. So, we'd also like to thank our Leadership Society sponsors, Cedar Rapids Bank and Trust, Holmes Murphy, and United Fire Group. They're down here in front. Let's give them a round of applause. And also, our Women's Leadership Initiative Committee was very instrumental in putting this whole thing together. They are listed in your program, but I do want to mention all of them, and as I get through your names, if you can just stand up, we'd like to also applaud you. Dr. Sharon Petrosh, Deb Callahan, Patrice Carroll, Nicole Kavanaugh, Terry Koppler, Angie Corcoran, Lori Dolly, Ashley Ernst, Julie Golding, Joellen Haddad, Lisa Henderson, who's our chair, Kimberly Ivester, vice chair, Lori Santel, and Shelley Strelner. Let's have them stand, please. And they certainly can answer any questions for you, too. If you're not already a Women's Society member, they can certainly tell you a little bit more about it. I'd also like to thank our United Way staff, Erica Burkfield in the back, and many of our staff are here. They are always very instrumental in putting this together, so let's thank them, too. And one more thank you, a special thank you to our Centennial Year sponsors, Rockwell Collins and Transamerica. They are with us through this whole big year, which we're going to tell you a little bit more about. So let's give them a round of applause. This is a milestone year for United Way. It is our 100-year anniversary. And it's hard to believe we've been around here in eastern Iowa for 100 years. And as we celebrate 100 years of work in the community, there are so many individuals, companies, nonprofits, and partners that have all contributed to our success. And we'd like to thank them all. I can't possibly mention them because there are literally thousands of them, but I do want to bring to your attention that there's going to be a lot of fun this year, fun and celebration. On your tables, you also have a bookmark that talks about some events. On June 17th, we are having an annual meeting. It's a public annual meeting, not a business meeting. And we have Ms. Stacy Stewart, who is the U.S. President of United Way, coming in from Baltimore to be our keynote speaker that day. It will be a wonderful event. We're delighted that she's going to join us. So please consider that, coming to the event. It'll be at the Marriott. It's a noon luncheon. Also on August 3rd at Brucemore, we are having a birthday party. It's a community birthday party. It'll be from noon to 4. There'll be activities for families and kids, music. We'll be kicking off our fall campaign and announcing what our goal is going to be. It's free to the public, and certainly, put it on your calendar if you're looking for a Sunday afternoon event, because I think it'll be a lot of fun and an opportunity to learn a little bit more about United Way. We'll have many of our partners there talking about the work that they do. I'd also encourage you, if you have a chance before you leave, we've got some panels set up in the hallway that show you a little bit of our history. And you can imagine in 100 years there has been a lot of history. We will have an exhibit at the History Center downtown that will probably open within the next week. And we also have put together a documentary which we're happy to share with any civic groups. If you're a member of a group and you'd like somebody to come and speak about United Way and how we've been involved in the community all these years, we'd be delighted to come and share that with you. We really began in 1914 as part of the Chamber of Commerce, and I know Dee Barrett is here, and it's no longer the Chamber. We call it the Economic Alliance now, but we started with them in 1914 with a one-day event that was raised about $25,000 for, that's okay, don't worry about it, that raised about $25,000 for 4 agencies. You can imagine how much we've changed. And in 100 years, we've responded to the stock market crash, the Spanish flu epidemic, 2 world wars, the farm crisis in the 70s, the epic floods of 1993 and 2008, and the economic downturn. But through it all, the theme that I think is relevant in our history is that we are adaptable to the community needs and as the community changes. And we have had the unique ability to link the corporate community and philanthropy and donors with the nonprofit community and the needs that we have that constantly change. In 100 years, we've raised more than $238 million. That's a pretty significant achievement. And this year, we have a very unique opportunity. Jack Evans, president of the Hall Prine Foundation, his son Matt, are our chair and our chairs for the 2014 campaign. So we're using a multi-generational approach, parent and child, and I'm very happy to report that they have recruited 21 families in the community who have parents who have been involved with United Way and now their children, adult children, and collectively that group has pledged $550,000 as a challenge grant. So let's give them a round of applause. And that grant we want to match. And so that means for all of you who are women leaders, if you can step up $100, 100 years, that'll go towards matching that money. Or maybe if you haven't been a member and want to join, it's an opportunity to do so. But today is really about honoring the women who have played an important role in United Way and the history. And we have 13 women who are listed in your program. Not all of them could be here today, but I want to mention each of them personally, and then some of them are going to participate in a panel. I'm going to ask them to stand up when I read their name. We'll hold our applause till the end and just tell you a little bit. The first woman is Anita Terpstra. Anita was the chair of our board of directors in 1975, our first woman board chair. Anita's back there. Thank you, Anita, for being here. Kathy Lamb was chair of our annual campaign, the first woman to run the annual campaign in 1987, and to chair the board of directors in 1992. Linda DeWolf, who used to be at St. Luke's Hospital, chaired the board of directors in 1990. Linda could not be here today. Susie McDermott is here, and Susie was chair of our board of directors in 1994. Has been very active in the community. Kathy Eno was chair of our board of directors in 1995 and 96. She was so good we kept her for 2 years. Or else maybe nobody wanted to do it, I don't know. And she also chaired our annual campaign in 1999. Terry Christofferson chaired our annual campaign in 1998 and was chair of the board of directors in 1999. And Kathy and Terry and their husbands also ran campaigns, but their husbands ran the campaign at a different point in time, so we made it a family affair. Amy Johnson was chair of our annual campaign in 2004. Katie Oberbrockling, who's now at St. Luke's Hospital, chaired the board of directors in 2006. Lydia Brown, who could not be with us today, chaired our annual campaign in 2007, and that was the first year we hit $10 million, and it took a woman to do it. Beth Malicki co-chaired the campaign with Dennis Jordan in 2009. She was our first young leader to chair the campaign. Cindy Dietz chaired our board of directors in 2010, and she will actually chair the campaign next year with Larry Helling from Cedar Rapids Bank and Trust. Gilda Boyer and her husband Barry chaired the campaign in 2010, and Kathy Gullickson and her husband Mark chaired the campaign in 2012. And the unique part about Gilda and Barry and Kathy and Mark is when they came on the board, we only give them one vote, and they have to decide how they're going to vote between the two of them. Well, I think you can imagine who got the vote, right? These women have played a terrific part of United Way history, and without them, we wouldn't be here today. Let's give them a round of applause and thank them. You led the way for us. And now I'd like to introduce Amy Johnson. Amy is going to moderate our panel today. Amy has been a very familiar face to many of you for 27 years. She has been working in media, communications, public relations, and a variety of development jobs. She's also been very active as a community volunteer, serving on boards and working with many nonprofits. And as you heard, Amy did chair the campaign, so she knows firsthand. So please join me in welcoming Amy, and we'll have the rest of the committee members, or panel members, come up. So, you know what? Leave that for you. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. It's so much fun to see so many women here supporting United Way. We all have our war stories that we tell about when we chaired the campaign back in the day, and it's pretty funny. We all get together, and a few of us did last week, and we talked about, no, my campaign was tougher. No, my campaign was tougher. But the one thing that I can tell you that's most interesting for me is I chaired the campaign 10 years ago. And women were really starting to change the dynamics of United Way. For so many years, you know, some amazing men in our community spearheaded this effort. And what comes to mind during my tenure 10 years ago, I got the chance to interview Bill Corton and Bill Whipple about the reasons they had supported United Way and done so much to advance in the community. And now, as I look around this room and I look at this table, I'm thinking to myself, you know, in the years to come, a lot of the women in this room are going to be remembered for their role with United Way, which I think is so special and significant that we've changed some of the dynamics here. So, way to go, girls. We're going to do something really fun today. We're going to have a panel conversation, and this is the way it's going to work. I'm going to ask these four women, I'm going to introduce them first, and I'm going to ask these four women the same question a couple of times, and then we're going to wing it. We just want to hear from them about what United Way meant to them, their experiences with it, their challenges, their successes, and then we want you to get involved. And if you have any questions, we want you to feel free to write your questions on a note card. And then Erica is standing at the back, and Erica will grab your note cards, and we'll just have the women answer your questions as you think of them. So let's have fun, let's make this a conversation, and let's celebrate United Way. But first, I want to tell you a little bit about our very distinguished panel. And as the resumes poured in, my head hurt because these women have done so many things in the community that it's impossible to list everything. But I just wanted to briefly give you some highlights, in addition to, of course, their huge involvement with United Way. Terry Christopherson, to my immediate left. Terry's been involved with United Way for many, many years. She's chaired both the campaign and the board of directors, and now she's a trustee. She has been involved in many community capital campaigns and has served on over 25 boards of directors. She loves fundraising. She has 2 children, both married, and 2 grandchildren. And Terry just told me minutes ago she's willing to answer any question you have today. Go get them. Next to Terry is Kathy Gullickson. Kathy's been involved with United Way in many different roles as well, including chairing the campaign with her husband Mark in 2012. You just heard that from Lois. Mark and Kathy have 3 kids and 5 grandkids. And most recently, I love this, Kathy decided it was time to pursue a lifelong wish to play the guitar. So she bought a guitar in January, and she says she's learning to play it. Are you going to play for us today?
Very badly.
Very badly, okay. next to Kathy is another Kathy, Kathy Lamb. And Kathy was both a volunteer and an employee of the United Way through the years. She has been serving on board since the 1970s and was the very first woman to chair a United Way campaign, and that was in 1987. She has been married to her husband, John, for many years. She has 3 children and 5 grandchildren. So she paved the way for all the rest of us who chaired the campaigns. And last but not least, at the end of the table, Kathy Eno. Kathy is currently on the board of trustees for United Way and has also been on the board of directors and campaign chair over the years. I affectionately say that Kathy is the reason that I got roped into serving as campaign chair 10 years ago, and that's an entirely different story. She's giggling. Kathy's a retired educator and an entrepreneur. She is married to Rex, and they have 2 children and soon to be 4 grandchildren. So that is our panel today. This is a unique opportunity for you to pick the brains of some of the foremost women with United Way through the years. So we're going to get started. Panel, you ready? Okay, first question. I want each of you to answer it briefly, and you have 3 mics in front of you, so make sure they're on. And Ron's got that covered. Okay, no worries. Ron Roush is back there. He's great. Okay. So here we go, and Terry, we'll just start with you, okay? What accomplishments were achieved during your tenure as campaign chair or vice chair or board chair at United Way that are most significant to you?
Well, first of all, we made the goal. I mean, that's the biggest thing right there. A story I might share with that was anyone that's chaired this campaign knows that goal, whether you're going to make it or not, goes right down to the wire. I mean, minutes almost. And we were making a corporate call on someone that had promised a significant gift, and they were, I believe, at least 100,000 short, maybe even more than that. So it was an interesting meeting. But when we came out of there, we were assured that they would make the amount that they said they would. So that was a very challenging, but a very, very fun call. And maybe it wasn't. I mean, Kathy will tell it a little bit different way because Kathy was there with me, but it was a good call, and it paved the way for future campaigns as well. I think a couple of things as far as accomplishments. One thing that I was very, very much surprised with, you know that this community is generous. You know that this community has wonderful people that care very much. But until you've been out and you've had the CEOs very willing to meet with you, until you have people that you're speaking to, that agency people are speaking to, you just don't realize how passionate people are about this community, and that was awe-inspiring to me. I think it has set a direction in my life that will forever be changed because of what I saw happening. It is very contagious. I think also, as far as campaign chair, it was interesting at my time because this was 98, 99. In 98, I was campaign chair. In 99, I was board chair. That has changed a little bit now. You don't always have to be campaign chair and then board chair. And it was a challenge for me to be able to look at the long-term strategies of the organization while I was still in the midst of the campaign. So, but it was an exciting time, and the power of United Way can never be underestimated.
Hi, everybody. My year was interesting in that it was 2012, and there were some economic realities going on in town. As you know, a United Way campaign is giant. There are over 22,000 people who actually give to the campaign. And there are hundreds of companies. But we have a few companies who are really anchor companies for us in our community. And they have been so supportive over the years. And they continue to be. But our year was one when they were pulling back some of their corporate gifts. And these are not easy messages to hear, but it's a reality of the economics of the situation. So they have fewer employees. They aren't able to give at the same level. So we decided that we would look at really recruiting new companies. So we had a goal of 25 new companies. And we didn't do this by ourselves. Our loan executives are fabulous, and did a lot of the work themselves as well. But we ended up with 58 new companies our year. And that's out of a total of 528 companies. So that was a cool accomplishment. That's actually more than 10% of the companies. Now, a new company might be a very small company, and their contribution may not be huge, but it's the future of the campaign as well. So we thought that 58 new companies was really a cool accomplishment. We made every effort to increase personal contacts, not just with CEOs. That's always part of the campaign chair's job, is to go visit the CEOs, which is really, really fun. You learn a lot about companies and you meet a lot of people. But we also made every effort to go to employee groups. And those, for me, are the best, because you're looking face-to-face with the folks. So we really did a lot of that. It was also sort of the beginning of some e-marketing. That was an interesting accomplishment. But we ended up also raising over $10 million, and I think it was maybe the 7th year in a row or something. So we were relieved to make our goal. I guess maybe everyone is relieved to make our goal, but that was sort of the flavor of our year.
I did a poll earlier and determined what I already thought was the truth, is that I'm the oldest person up here. So I'm going to take the liberty of putting things into perspective for you as the first woman to chair the United Way campaign in 1987. That was 27 years ago. My daughters were 10, 16, and 18, and I was 42. When you think about that, that's a lot. I was a woman, a mom, a wife, a daughter, and a very active community volunteer. And at that time, gas was 89 cents a gallon, and postage stamps were 24 cents. So that kind of puts things in perspective for you a little bit. In terms of accomplishments in the campaign, I think probably as the first woman to chair the campaign, and I will tell you that we didn't make a big issue of the fact that I was the first woman to chair the campaign in 1987, because frankly, it wasn't anything to be very proud of. And so we made a conscious decision not to talk about it a lot. Others there was a little bit of rumbling and talking about it, but we didn't talk about it in the campaign. We didn't make a big deal out of it. At that time, the person who recruited me to the position was John Knapp. Now, many of you in this room will know John. And when John called you into his office and asked you to do something, Nancy, I'm looking at you, you didn't often say no. You know, he had all good reasons. To be real honest with you, I can't remember what they were. I think I was so taken aback by him thinking of having the confidence in me to do that I said yes. How could I possibly say no? I think the biggest accomplishment in doing that was showing that a woman can, in fact, do the job and do it very well. We raised, I think, $3.4 million that year in 1987. We had a successful campaign, and we had great visibility in the community. The kickoff was at the Five Seasons Center. At that time, it was still kind of newish and a big deal. We had a huge event over the lunch hour, and I will never forget it. It was very festive, and for some reason, I was telling Hillary earlier, I was wearing a party hat. I don't remember why I was doing that, but I was. And John Knapp turned to me and said, "Lamb, you would do absolutely anything to raise money." And those are great memories. So to say that the accomplishment was, raising $3.4 million certainly is the truth. And being the first woman to do it, now looking back on it, I realize I didn't think it was a big deal at the time. I was a person who'd been very fortunate to do a lot of volunteer leadership roles in the community up to that point. And I'd always had the philosophy that leadership is action, not position. And that I would never, as a leader, ask anyone to do anything that I wouldn't be willing to do myself. And so I think being able to take that campaign, learn about a community more, that I thought I'd lived here since I was 10, thought I knew everything about the community. And when you chair the campaign and work on the campaign, you learn more than you ever thought you ever would. And the fact that United Way campaigns are so far-reaching and have such an impact on so many lives in a positive way, and being able to be in that role and do that at that time was a great accomplishment and a great privilege.
I actually had no problems. It was a piece of cake. You know, I really followed Terry, and I do want to just share a little bit about that story that she referred to. Actually, she was like a Tasmanian devil. And I never, it was like the good cop, bad cop, because I kept kind of trying to say, you know, this is going to be all right, and Terry was set. And I'll tell you what, I learned a great deal of respect for her that day, because that kind of mental toughness you really do have to do that kind of campaign. And I think these ladies said it best. It is just an experience of a lifetime, and it's like if you are willing to take a risk and say, this might be outside my comfort level, even so, it was a challenge that I embraced. I think our accomplishments, Terry, in her infinite wisdom, the year before had set a 10% increase. Well, so that meant Kathy had to do it too, and that was a lot of money. It was by far the hugest, largest increase we had ever had. And my goal then, when my husband later became the campaign chair, even though we raised a lot more money, I raised higher percent goal. And I loved it. I wanted him to be successful. So it was a great experience. I had the experience of being the board chair earlier. So I had a really strong background in United Way, and I had to do it 2 years. The story is that Jack Evans was supposed to follow me. He left to go to the Hall Prine Foundation, and so he said, you can do it for me, just one more year. So I had a great campaign. I had lots of fun. And I think some of my loaned execs are in this room, and I have to tell you, a campaign cannot be accomplished without those loaned execs. So thank you to the people that are out there. So those are my comments. Thanks.
Wow. Isn't this fun? I have to give a shout out to Kathy Eno's husband, Rex, because I'll tell you more about my year in a bit, but they were looking for a campaign chair to follow me, and they were trying to court Rex Eno. And we were here at this country club having lunch with Rex and a few men in the community. I won't name them. And they were saying, Rex, this is a piece of cake. Because Rex was concerned about time management. He had a big job, and Rex, you're going to be fine. Just take this. Don't worry. It's not that much work. And it'll be fine. And I just sat silently after going through one heck of a year with Mary Klinger. Where is she? Mary and I rode our little dinghy up the United Way River that year, alone, together. And anyway, God bless Rex Eno, because the last 10 minutes of the lunch, these guys are saying, it's a piece of cake. Don't worry, just do it, Rex. Rex said, I don't want to talk to you anymore. Amy, I want to hear what you have to say. Was it hard? I said, yes. He said, how hard was it? I said, very hard. He said, how hard did you work? I said, so hard. I worked like crazy, but it was the most meaningful thing I've ever done. And Rex, God bless him, he wanted to hear. And he went on to have a record-setting year after me. He raised $9 million, I think. So anyway. And show his underwear, and that's a whole other story. Okay. Whew. Okay, ladies. Next question, and this is our last group question, and then we're going to kind of go individually here, and then we want to hear what you think. Briefly, what was, and kind of identify just one or two things, okay, just kind of high-level overview. What was the most unique thing about your times with United Way? Unique thing. Terry?
I think, there's a lot of different things you think of, but what stood out for me, because we've got a lot of young women in the audience, and all I can say is don't ever underestimate yourself, because when I walked in as chair of the board in 1999, I don't know how many know that for a time the staff at United Way were unionized. And so I took on the position, and I'm walking through a picket line as we're doing negotiating for the contract. And I said to myself, what have I gotten myself into? I don't know much about this. And of course, United Way, always as strong as it is, had the right people at the table. We had a successful negotiation, but it was just a surprise for me. Later on, staff decided they didn't really want to be part of a union, so they voted it out. But it was an interesting experience.
What was unique about my year as campaign chair was that the whole campaign staff was new. We had no experience on the campaign staff. But you know what? That didn't stand in our way at all. I'm looking straight at Hillary. Yeah, honestly, fresh creativity, hard work, no attachment to the way things had been done before, new questions, and the campaign staff before was fabulous. I'm not casting any dispersion, but that was our big challenge. That was definitely what was unique about our year. So we all learned it together. We had a lot of new loaned execs as well. So we did. We just learned it together. Everyone brought what skills they had. We pieced things together, and it was great fun and very successful. So that was my story.
I think that I'd have to say that the thing that's most unique about my time with United Way is my path. I started volunteering for United Way in 1983 for the Information Referral Committee, which is the forerunner of United Way 211. And then I became a member of the board, did some leadership roles, and chaired the campaign. And then that was in 1987. And then in 1988, I went to work for United Way as the campaign director and assistant executive director until 1990. At which time I went to work for Four Oaks and came back on the United Way board, chaired the board in 1992, and then I went to work for the YMCA for 16 years and had a conflict of interest in chairing the board, and so had to give that up. And then from that point forward, from 1992 until now, I have worked for a United Way partner agency. So I've kind of seen United Way from all points of view and all perspectives, and that's a conversation for another time if anybody wants to ask me any questions.
I think an experience that I had was in the old way that they allocated funds. The agencies had to make the presentation to United Way every year, and I was the president of YWCA, now Waypoint, and so for several years, I had to make those presentations, and you would get pitted out in the first 5 minutes. You're so nervous because, you know, all the money depended on you giving a compelling argument for why you needed it. And so when they changed that process, I think that was very, very important. The other thing I did a lot during my term as chair was strategic planning, which I don't find very sexy, but it was necessary, you know, to change the direction at that point in time. And we did a lot of it. And we also then worked very hard on evaluating our CEO. And I was like the chair of a search committee for a new CEO, and we really redesigned that. So those were really important things that I remember. But my biggest memory is going with my daughter, who is a loaned exec for Terry's campaign, and she's like 22 years old and cute as Christmas, and she has to go talk to the sewer and public works people at night, and so I went with her. And watched this kid up there. She was so nervous, but she did an amazing job. So it was a huge growth. Probably got her next job for her. So that's my great memory.
Okay, ladies, let's shift gears. And Kathy Lamb, I'm going to direct this question to you, but if any of the rest of you want to jump in, do so. So last week we had a preliminary meeting at United Way, and we talked about the shifting gender roles. You know, how this United Way was once very male-dominated, and now women not only have equal footing, in fact, I'd say in some ways, women are just taking charge of United Way in many ways. Forgive me, Jack Evans, who I love. But Kathy Lamb had some interesting comments, and ladies, jump in after that. how do you feel about the shifting roles, and do you feel it, do you sense it? Kathy, when you started, you said that it really wasn't that big of a deal, at least no one talked about it, that a woman was taking charge, but it was behind the scenes a huge deal.
I'm sure it was. Those comments just never got back to me, thankfully. So I think what speaks louder is success. And so if you're able to do a job and do it well and be successful, then that conversation tends to diminish some. But when we had this conversation last week, my feeling is that, well, I guess, again, to go backwards, is that my sharing leadership roles with men started 30-plus years ago, so my perspective reflects those years. So that's, for those of you who are in that realm now, you have a different perspective on it than I do, and I understand and respect that. I feel that as long as all parties come to the table with their focus on the goal at hand and confidence in their talents and their expertise and strengths and how they can complement each other, you'll be successful. I know that may be perceived by some to be a rather naive view, but I don't think we need to make a big deal out of it, and that's just kind of how I feel about it.
I guess I just think women supporting women is becoming more common. I would like to see more companies in this room have women CEOs. I'd like to send a woman to Congress this year. And I think all of those barriers are breaking down finally. And, I thought about being Amy's board agent and Terry's board agent for thing. And when I think of people that I think are qualified for a board position, quite often it's women that come to the forefront for me. And so I think, being a mentor, being a friend, and challenging people to do something that maybe they have not done before is a really exciting thing to share with another woman.
I would look at it as rather than women versus men, and that isn't necessarily your intent, but I think anytime you sit on a board, you need the skill sets of both genders, and the strength comes from that power. Women are able to look at things very intuitive. They understand, they're sensitive. Men have a different thought perspective. We also multitask. Men can't, struggle somewhat with that. And so at the same time, we need the strengths they possess as well. So to me, you get off, you get a little bit away from it, and you give the success stories that you have, and it speaks for itself.
I'll just echo kind of what she was saying. I think there's tremendous potential in shared leadership because as each person's different, women sometimes tend to be different from men. And I think when you have the shared leadership, no group is going to be totally misunderstood and no group is going to be forgotten. So I think that's the important thing. And we need to claim our gender. And we just have to not, and nobody needs to belong like a man, behave like a man in order to be effective to get things done. So I just think it's encouraging, and I just think there's tremendous potential in claiming that leadership role.
Kathy Eno, what was the one thing that you learned from your experience with United Way that you didn't expect?
Well, I think being able to fail, try something new, sort of strategize, and then it doesn't always work, and then pick yourself back up and say, we need to do it a different way, we need to strive to do it, more effectively. Being a risk taker for me has always been hard, and so, as my husband would say, we would have no money in the stock market, but I definitely became a risk taker and really tried to do things strategically, but also some brand new ideas that maybe hadn't been done before. So,
Terry, what was the most enlightening part of your time as campaign chair for you?
Enlightened part. It might be, I mentioned earlier that I had underestimated the generosity of this community and the fact that people believe so strongly in United Way. kind of aha moments for me were probably what occurred after the campaign and after chairing that board. I think you don't realize the assets maybe you have as a person. When Kathy mentions the risk factor, I set a very aggressive goal the year of the campaign. I mean, staff, I think, were actually questioning me for setting the goal that I did, but you start to learn so much more about yourself and about your community that was inspiring to me.
I have to agree with that, too, that one thing about being on a leadership role in the United Way campaign, especially if you're campaign chair, it's a huge risk. You're putting your face, your name, your reputation on the line, and it's up to you to bring home money for your community, for all these social service agencies who need it so much. And the weight is huge, the pressure is huge, but what's the old saying? You can't win if you don't play. You've got to take these great risks, and this community really makes it easy because they do help bring it home for you. They really do. I want to hear from Kathy. What was the most rewarding thing about your time with United Way? Kathy G.
The most rewarding thing about doing it is hanging out with people who care. It really is. I'm hanging out with people who care enough to volunteer, and I'm talking about the committees. I'm talking about the people who are on the committees and the companies are just wonderful. You know, they add this to their normal duties, and hanging out with the CEOs who really want to make their goal, who really want to do better than next year, and it's just heartwarming. My very favorite thing is the employee groups, face to face. Yeah. These are the folks who are giving out of every paycheck, and it just warms my heart. That's definitely the most rewarding part.
And that's a great answer, Kathy. And this leads into the next question. You know, I will never forget some of the crazy things that I did during my year. And my year was unique because it was during an interim period before Lois Bunce arrived, and the previous CEO had left, and I had no vice chair. So again, it was just me and Mary Klinger. But it was, I would just arrive on location, and Mary would wind me up, and I say, "Where am I? Okay, who am I talking to?" But you meet some of the most fascinating people that you would never meet otherwise. And I want to know, any of you, what was your funniest or most memorable call? I can lead into it and say, I went to Apache Hose and Belting at like all hours of the day and night. I never even knew what it was. It existed, but God bless these workers. They didn't make much, but they gave so much to United Way. And I was out there on the floor, you know, doing the rah-rah, and they were fabulous. Do you have any special moments about a call, funny moments, meaningful moments that come back to you?
I don't, as far as a call, I do not, but I was being interviewed live on the radio, and I was asked about the United Way president's salary. And I knew where this was kind of leading, and I can't tell you how I danced around the answer, but I got through it, and that was it. I mean, you know, it was almost like, could they just cut this off, please? But that was one I remember very well.
Is anybody from Raining Rose here? Raining Rose is a cool company. They were one of our Pacesetter companies. So they had their employee kickoff was early, and it was fantastic. They were actually moving into their new building. It was a terrible time for them to say yes, and they said yes. Anyway, they wanted to be a Pacesetter for us, so it was super. And you know, they had the Blue Man Group came in somehow. I don't know what that was all about. And what I really enjoyed the most of all, and I was there to just give the pep talk, you know, which that kind of comes naturally to me, so no problem with the cheerleading. And I was just so impressed with the way those employees interacted with their CEO. It was really cool. There was obviously respect and fun, and he talked from his heart, and it was one of my most fun experiences.
You learn a lot about company cultures, don't you? You walk into the companies and you know exactly what the culture is the minute you set foot in there when you're representing United Way. Kathy.
I just remember going to General Mills like 4 times in one day. And Bill Mowry was at every single one of the presentations, and I had to go back for the last shift to help Bill with that one. And by then he had lost his voice, and I took this care package in full of breath mints and things for him to blow in his nose. And so I just remember that as one of my amazing memories of going into a company. It was terrific.
Before I ask any other questions, Erica, have you gotten any questions? Oh, bring it on down. Bring it on down. Okay, while Erica's coming to the podium, Terry, I want to know, because you've been so involved in so many boards and so many fundraising efforts, what advice do you have for women who want to get involved in nonprofits and philanthropy in our community?
First of all, I think don't underestimate the power of networking. Women are great at it, and we are strong. And I will say, and all of us are within a certain age here on this panel, never worry about you being a younger person and asking, does the woman have time? Does she have time? Of course we do. We share the stories, we share our successes, we share our challenges, and we've learned from it, and we want to share it with you. Boards, the experience of being on a lot of boards is you learn a lot about different people. You learn a lot about organizations in the community. I think what is passionate most for me, you have to have a passion for everything you do, but are the people that are on the front lines doing the volunteering. For us, obviously, it's easy. I don't know if I'd say it's totally easy to raise money, but it is easy to raise money if you like to sell what you believe in. For others that are really day-to-day experiencing the challenges of people, it is something different.
I want to add something. Is this not on?
Is it on?
I was thinking about this when we were preparing for today, and this is a message I want to share because I think it's important, and it has, again, we'll go back to my advancing age, I guess, but find your passion and follow it. Don't get caught up in the moment and then let it go. I mean, this is a great group of people here today with a lot of energy. You can listen to people talk, and you can get fired up about all of the wonderful things that United Way can do and what you can do in terms of helping your community. And then you're going to go back to your office and you're going to forget about it. Don't let that happen. Don't forget about it. There's so, and everyone here has said this, there is so much talent, energy, creativity in this room, and you need to capture the moment and do something with it. Don't let that go. And then my real advice to you is, because it's advice I've taken myself, is as you age, don't focus on retirement. Think about the next chapter. What is my next chapter? Because you have, and you will have, you may be able to financially retire from whatever you're doing, but you still have energy, you still have creativity, you still have talents. The community needs them on boards, in part-time paid positions. I'm fortunate to be able to do that myself, and I love it. I worked for the YMCA for 16 and a half years and retired from the Y, but my next chapter was finding a part-time job that I love with Big Brothers Big Sisters, and I work just 20 hours a week. So you could do that for money, you can do that in volunteer ways, but think about the next chapter.
One thing that I remember the year I was campaign chair is I got to do a legacy video with Bill Quarton, Bill Whipple, Louise Knapp, because Russ was not alive then, and Bill Quarton, who of course was a broadcasting pioneer and started Channel 2 in our community where I started my career. He said to me, and he was 102 at the time and sharp as a tack, and he said to me the thing that he loved about United Way was that all of us can't imagine what the needs in our community are going to be 20, 40, 50, 100 years from now. But United Way will endure, and they will know how to match the needs in our community with the money that's available to make it work in the best possible way. And so it's just kind of my final thought. All right, I have one final question for our panelists before we wrap up. And I want each of you to briefly answer this, okay? Because we're nearing the end of our time together. What advice do you have for United Way for the next 100 years, and particularly for the Women's Leadership Initiative? And Terry, do you want to start?
Yes, as far as the women's initiative, we are looking at the health of women. The one thing we as women do not do very well is take care of ourselves. We never put ourselves first, and sometimes we suffer because of that. I'm the worst one as far as saying no to things, but I have learned over time from the advice of others to do that once in a while. So I think the Women's Initiative needs to continue with health needs. What does that mean? It may mean all wellness kinds of things. It may be serving a population that cannot otherwise get some of the health care needs that they have met. What was the rest of the question?
What advice do you have for United Way for the next 100 years, and particularly Women's Leadership Initiative?
As far as the advice for the United Way for the next 100 years or whatever, I think as our society changes, we're seeing a difference in the role of women, what it's done to family life. There's only so many hours in the day for women. Yes, you have your family. Yes, you have your job. Yes, you have your volunteering. So prioritizing that, and a little bit echoing Kathy Lamb in the respect of, generationally or years and decades in your life, you have to change what moves you forward. So as far as the challenge for United Way, I believe it will be how do we reach this next generation? A generation, where people are employed a lesser amount of time at the particular job. So loyalty changes a little bit. All the social media kind of things. But how do we reach the heart? Because if you reach the heart, you've got the money.
I thought about this a little bit. I think what United Way needs to be sure to do in the next 100 years is to stay flexible. And I think flexibility, well, this is one of my little axioms. Flexibility, I think as we age, we just need to remain flexible. I think it's one of the most important things. And for an organization as large as United Way to be flexible is a challenge. But change is with us always, and it's only the rate of change that's increasing. So as needs change, United Way needs to change. And that's a challenge for a big organization. To be able to be nimble, particularly because things change fast. And for women's leadership, great answer. Health needs of women are kind of what we've started with. I see no reason to move off of that. I think that the Women's Leadership Initiative just needs to get bigger. And I just think it needs to grow. And the best way I can think of to suggest that to each and every one of you, if you're not a member, become one. And if you are, go get another one. And that'll do it. We'll be there. Keep at it.
Sorry. That's the only thing I would add would be to stay ahead of the curve and be innovative. Kind of goes along with being flexible, but don't get stagnant. And I mean with regard to the Women's Leadership Initiative. And to support one another, not only here as a part of this group, but just women supporting women as a general rule.
I think we've all said embrace change and be nimble. Those are important things. But I do remember a lot of the women, there was 6 or 7 of us that started the initiative, and we're going, I don't get this, when we first started talking about it. And then we started embracing it and understand how it could grow. And Lois told me today, we made over $1 million this year. And that is just an amazing feat. So we need to keep that momentum going and show the boys.
I want to thank our panel today. Weren't they great? Give them a big round of applause. And thanks to all of you for all you do for United Way. And now I want to introduce Lisa Henderson, who's going to briefly wrap things up. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks, Terry, Kathy, and Kathy. Weren't they great? I mean, it was such an inspiration to hear from them today. Let's give them another round of applause. I am so proud to be the chairperson this year of the United Way's Women's Leadership Initiative. Since 2006, our society has united the caring power of women Women with a Vision, which you just heard from all of these women sitting up here, to provide funding for health care services for women in need. It was women helping women. I actually think most of them just wrote what I was going to say for the next few minutes. Healthcare is a major concern for women in East Central Iowa, and we're working together to make sure that we have a positive impact on the health needs of women in our own community. We focus on women's health in response to a United Way needs survey that occurred in 2005, showing that health care was the #1 need in our community. We all know, as was mentioned earlier, that we're the last people to take care of ourselves. We take care of our families, we take care of everyone else first. Last year, the Women's Leadership Initiative distributed $170,409 to our 3 partner agencies: the Community Health Free Clinic, Eastern Iowa Health Center, and Lynn County Public Health. That ensures that all women have the opportunity to access health care information and services. We know it takes a team to make a difference, and we'd like to recognize these partners that are here with us today. So can we give them a round of applause, please? The Women's Leadership Initiative has provided funding for medical co-pays, prescription medication, emergency dental care, eye care, cancer screenings, and diabetic testing supplies to women within our community. Currently, our WL membership is at 304 women. My script says 303, so we've gone up 1 since this was written yesterday. I'm hoping we have a couple more that I've talked to today as well. I'm also excited to announce, and Kathy mentioned this earlier, that this year the Women's Leadership Initiative surpassed $1 million that we have raised since we were founded in 2006. So give yourselves a round of applause. We're going strong, but as was mentioned, we need all of you and we need more to be able to meet the needs in our community. Many of you in attendance are members of the Women's Leadership Initiative, and to you I say thank you. If you're interested in joining the Women's Leadership Initiative Circle, it takes a $500 designation. I also want to remind you, whether or not you are in the Women's Leadership Initiative now or thinking about joining, that this is the only leadership society that every year you do need to redesignate that you're going to be a member of the Women's Leadership Initiative. So when your campaign, your workplace campaign comes around, or if you just are donating on your own, please remember to make that designation. You can join WLI by making a gift today or through your campaign. Steering committee members and staff will be at the door as you leave, and they have bags, women's leadership bags, reusable shopping bags that have all the details that you'll need. You'll recognize them because they're wearing these little buttons that say, "Ask me about Women's Leadership Initiative." So please consider joining us. There's another great reason to get involved with the Women's Leadership Initiative, and that is our infamous Power of the Purse, which is coming up on July 24th. And if you've never attended, please stop by. There's a sign-up sheet in the hall, and sign up to make sure you get an invitation to it because it's a great event. So again, July 24th, mark your calendars. We'd love to have you there. If you sign up, we'll make sure you get an invitation. Finally, I'd like to recognize the incoming chair for this wonderful group, Kimberly Ivester. Kimberly? There she is. Kimberly is with St. Luke's Unity Point, and she will be chairing the group next year. And then we have Joe Haddad, and Joe is going to be the co-chair. And Joe is from the Abbey Center. Joe, can you stand up? Did she step out? Okay, I thought she might have to, so thank you. Finally, let's also give thanks to the companies that have provided items for the gift bags that you have received. I'm on Communications, Mercy Medical Center, Unity Point St. Luke's Hospital, and Verbena Massage Spa and Tea Bar.